Hello, Jenny Hall here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I'd like to share a sweet Father's Day card. This is created with the Happy Father's Day stamp set as well as the Feelin' Foxy stamp set. I'm going to use a very pretty stencil that's from the Outdoor Scene Builder set. There are 4 stencils in this package, but we're just going to use the one that has the clouds. And to cut my card panel, I'm going to use a Scallop A2 card frame die. I'm using the second from the largest. And the cool thing about these dies is that they not only have a scalloped edge, but they have a pierced line just on the inside as well. So I'm using some Post-it tape, and I've gone along that little dotted line so that I have the white edge remain on the finished panel. To start off the cloud line, I'm using one side of the 4-sided cloud stencil and 2 colors of Distress Oxide ink. Once I have a bottom established, then I'll move the stencil high enough to where I can see some white area above the blue line, and that's going to give me that look of cloud banks. So I'm starting out each piece with a light blue, and then I'll add the dark blue. And I'm trying to use a really light hand because if I push too hard, then maybe I'll add a little too much color. I really love the look of the blue sky peeking out from the clouds, but I want it to be a smooth transition from the blue area up to the white. To help out this transition and make it look a little more natural, I'm using a very light hand with some gray Distress Oxide ink, and that's just giving just a little something to break up the color. Now, to give a little interest in the background, I've spritzed on some water and picked it up with a cloth, and that's going to give me some very faint little spots and dots on the background. But as a contrast, I wanted some very bright ones as well. So a little bit of diluted acrylic white paint with a paintbrush is a perfect way. So now you can see once it's peeled back, I have that white border, and I think I'll save all of those little post-it pieces because I use them so many times until they can't stick anymore. My images from Feelin' Foxy are being stamped with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink onto a panel of watercolor paper. I'm using the smooth side of the watercolor paper, and it sometimes takes a few stamps down with the ink pad because the watercolor paper has a bit more texture to it than normal. And I've gotten my heat tool onto it just to make sure that everything is nice and dry. Because it's watercolor paper, it takes longer for the ink to soak into that paper. To do the coloring, I'm going to use some Karin brush markers, and I think these things are just so much fun to work with. If you haven't used them before, then they are a liquid pigment that is very brightly colored, and they're in a style of a marker, but that marker tip is extremely juicy. And so the color comes out really, really well onto the paper. There are several different ways to use these markers. You could go directly to paper, as I've done here, and I've added 3 colors here and then used a wet brush just to kind of move them around. And then I've used that cream color in place of what would normally be the white tips on the fox. Another way is to scribble them onto your work surface and then use a wet brush to bring them over to the image. I kind of like this method best because it doesn't leave any harsh marker lines. Sometimes I can get harsh lines from going direct to paper, but I also get a more vibrant color when I go direct to paper with them. So it's kind of a toss-up. Do I want to have that really smooth look, or do I want to have that vibrant and intense color? So I kind of developed a method when I'm working with them that I do it both ways. And I find the areas that need more color, and I use direct from marker to paper to go in and add some, like maybe in the shadow lines, some really strong color. But the best way for me to move the marker to paper around is to start off with a dark color here, like you see on this little butterfly, and then use a lighter marker to move that color out and spread it around and have a nice transition. This is the way that I prefer to have that really strong, intense color. Otherwise, I like to just scribble it out on my work surface. This little stamp set is just the cutest, and I chose this stamp set for a Father's Day card because it just looked really sweet. This Father's Day card is destined to go to my husband from me, as I've already made a couple of cards that were from my children to my father, to their father. Now I have not been able to locate my dies, and so I quickly did a little fussy cutting and cut out the images, and then took a long tipped black marker, run along the edge of that cut line, and it gives it a nice clean finished look. Now I'm going to use some double-sided foam adhesive and raise up that panel, super easy, and then I will use some liquid glue for the most part to adhere the images. I'm going to keep it really simple because this is a quick and easy card, but not only that, it's for a man. And sometimes whenever I have cards for guys, I don't like to bling them up too much, although it's really hard because I love those rhinestones and sequins that are in the Honeybee shop. I would like to mention that the Caron brush markers, the Distress Oxides, and almost all of the products that I've used today are available in the Honeybee store. They don't just sell you your favorite stamps, they sell you your favorite supplies as well. Even the Wink of Stella pen is available in the Honeybee store. I find myself going to the Honeybee shop to grab and refill my supplies. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time.